2020 NBA season is over, and I think it's time. It's time to update my top 50 players in the NBA list. Obviously, the top 50 list is an ever-changing list, and it can change so much just in the course of one season. Players get better, players get worse, some players are put in better situations, some aren't. A new draft class comes in, and just overall, a lot can change. Anyways, let's just cut to the chase, man. These rankings are going to be based on who I think are going to be the best players going into next season. That is assuming everyone is healthy. Keep in mind that when I'm ranking these players, I am simply answering the question to myself: is this player better than this player? So that means that my rankings aren't solely based on the last season, although it definitely does play a factor. I'm also taking into account how I believe some players will return from their injuries and also any other improvements that I predict going into next season. Also, throughout this video, I'm also incorporating a tier list. The tiers simply represent a bracket of players, a group of players that I believe for the most part, emphasis on the most part, can be interchangeable. And those will be marked by the color on the card of each player. But let's get into this, man. Let's start off with 50 through 41. Coming in at number 50, we have Jaren Jackson. Number 49, De'Aaron Fox. 48, LaMarcus Aldridge. 47, Gordon Hayward. 46, Marcus Smart. 45, Draymond Green. 44, Nikola Vucevic. 43, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. 42, John Morant. And 41, Zion Williamson. Nothing too special in this part of the list. Like I always say, 41 through 50, most people don't even go that far into their list making abilities, you know what I'm saying? So I am very open to having this part of the list very interchangeable with some of the players that are outside my top 50. And while we're at it, I might as well mention my honorable mentions, and so far I have 6 that I want to name, those being DeAndre Ayton, TJ Warren, Spencer Dinwiddie, John Wall, Derrick Rose, Dennis Schroeder, and let's add Blake Griffin to that depending on how he comes back. However, probably the most controversial thing you'll notice about this part of the list is Draymond Green. Because in April, I didn't have Draymond Green on my list. So you might be asking, B-Souls, Draymond has literally done nothing from April to this year for you to move him up like this. He wasn't even in your top 50. Now he's 45. I know. But keep in mind, like I said in the beginning of this video, I am taking into account any improvements I suspect going into next season. And Draymond Green, I've repeatedly said on this channel, is a player that I believe if he's on a trash team, he's not going to be as effective as he can be. But if he's on a good team, a playoff team, like the Golden State Warriors are supposed to be next year, with Steph and Clay and this draft pick and whatever they want to do with that coming back, then I believe Draymond Green will remind people to a certain degree as to why he was considered a top 20 player in 2017, 2018, because there was a reason for that. And me putting him at 45 obviously means that I don't see him being a top 20 player next season. But all I'm saying is next season, I believe that Draymond will remind us as to why he was held to that regard back like just 2 years ago. Also, notice the drop Zion Williamson made from my list in April to this one. I'm not gonna lie, I think I jumped the gun a little too much on Zion Williamson back then, and right now I really am concerned about his weight and his stamina, although I really shouldn't be talking. But with the way Zion is built right now, he is not as effective of a defensive player as he can and should be, and he also gets way too tired way too quickly, so much so that he gets a lot of injuries, and he's gassed most of the time he's on the court. So that's why he moved down a lot in my list. But with that being said, let's move on to the next part of this list. Next up, we got 40 through 31. And at 40, we have Zach LaVine, 39, Drew Holiday, 38, Domantas Sabonis, 37, DeMar DeRozan, 36, CJ McCollum, 35, D'Angelo Russell, 34, Jamal Murray, 33, Brandon Ingram, 32, Chris Middleton, and 31, Bradley Beal. This is the part of the list where things get interesting to me. Now, I know I said earlier in the video that tiers, at least in this video, aren't supposed to represent a group of players or a category of players, but what you will see in this part of the list are a lot of the number 2 options in this league. Number 2 options that are great number 2 options, but a lot of people would be hesitant in building their team around said player. You got the Chris Middletons, the CJ McCollums, you got the Jamal Murrays of the world. We also have some of the, unproven young stars in the league in guys like D'Angelo Russell and Brandon Ingram. Now, let me take some time to harken back to just what I said like 2 sentences ago, because I just, blindly threw out Jamal Murray's name. But shout out to Jamal Murray, bro. Shout out to Jamal Murray, because in April, he didn't even make my top 50. But after what I saw in the bubble, yeah, he's a top 50 player. Now, I would put him this high. I am comfortable in putting him this high, although I know that jump is ridiculous from my April list to now. And I understand his numbers aren't sustainable. I'm not expecting Jamal Murray to be a 28 point per game scorer on 50-50 95 splits next season, because if I did, he'd be in the top 10, quite frankly. But I believe what Jamal Murray proved in the bubble is that he can be a more consistent scorer, a more consistent number 2 for the Denver Nuggets than what he has been in the past. Because I'm not gonna lie, although a decent amount of people did view Jamal Murray as a number 2 option, the conversation for who the second best player on the Denver Nuggets has been of strong contention the past couple of years. There was a conversation between Jamal Murray and Gary Harris, and then you got guys like Jeremy Grant, and then you got guys like Paul Millsap. But I think what Jamal Murray did in the bubble was separate himself clearly from those players. And it is now clear that the Denver Nuggets, unless some crazy trade happened, is Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray's team. I probably butchered that. Also, probably the other controversial part of this list is Bradley Beal being all the way at 31. How can a 30 point per game scorer be 31? How is that the 31st best player in the NBA? Now that sounds crazy, but I really do think the biggest reason as to why this is one, the league is just this talented, because once I name off the players I have above him, I really don't see how you can have him more than like 22, 21. And even then, you can still say, how is a 30 point per game scorer the 21st best player in the league? It's just how it is. It's just how it is. And number 2, defense. A lot of the players that I have over Bradley Beal are also great offensive players, but on top of that, they add to your team and to their value with their skill defensively. But actually, what you'll notice with this list compared to my last list is that I'm actually more lenient on the stars that are on bad situations. The reason for that, well, man, y'all gonna have to subscribe because I got a video coming in 2 days, but let's keep it moving. Now let's read off 30 through 21. At number 30, we got Kemba Walker, 29, Pascal Siakam, 28, Jaylen Brown, 27, Trae Young, 26, Kyle Lowry, 25, Rudy Gobert, 24, Devin Booker, 23, Donovan Mitchell, 22, Kristaps Porzingis, and 21, Bam Adebayo. This is the part of the list where we stray away from looking at players who are number 2 options to players who are definitively like number 1 options of a team, whether they are winning or not. We go from looking at guys like Jaylen Brown and Chris Middleton, and now we start looking at guys like Trae Young, Devin Booker. Although I must say, even though I just said that, I really do think there's an argument for having the 2 I mentioned earlier over Trae Young and Devin Booker. But again, like I said, I am being a little bit more lenient on the players putting up good numbers on bad teams. Just a little bit, you know what I'm saying? Just a little bit. But if you believe that Jaylen Brown and Chris Middleton right now are better players than those 2, I see the argument. That's all I'm saying. I see the argument. The only slight exception that I see in terms of looking at players that are number 1 options is probably Kristaps Porzingis and Bam Adebayo in this part of the list. They give you so much value. It's insane. It really is, especially when you consider what they give you defensively. Now, probably the most notable drop you will see in this part of the list compared to my last list is Pascal Siakam. Pascal Siakam dropped a lot. He had a tough bubble outing. He really did. Pascal Siakam did not look too good in the bubble. Now I know the whole conversation about the bubble and how it affected players. That's a whole different conversation. But honestly, even before all of this happened, I already was skeptical on how good Pascal Siakam could be as a number 1 option. And I really do think even if the bubble never happened, come the playoffs, I just can't look at Pascal Siakam and trust him too much. Because yes, while he is capable of giving you 22 to 24 points a game on, relatively good efficiency, I just think his bag offensively is not deep enough. And he isn't physically dominant enough to make up for that. Even Giannis himself. Giannis is a physical specimen, and even Giannis is getting criticized for the way that he scores and how effective it is in the playoffs. And also, after the bubble, to me, Donovan Mitchell is the best player in the Utah Jazz. That is clear at this point. That is clear. And now, we get into the top 20. At 20, we have Karl Anthony Towns, 19, Ben Simmons, 18, Paul George, 17, Klay Thompson, 16, Russell Westbrook, 15, Kyrie Irving, 14, Joel Embiid, 13, Chris Paul, 12, Damian Lillard, and 11, Jason Tatum. Look, man, this is probably the most controversial part of this list as a whole, because from 11 to 20, there's a lot of room for debate. I will admit that there's a lot of room for debate, and the players involved are some of the most known players in the league. This is a part of the list where we start looking at players who have shown spurts, who have shown glimpses of being able to be a superstar, but just haven't done it consistently enough to be considered a superstar. The only real outlier to what I just said is probably Chris Paul, because Chris Paul has been one of the most consistent players the past season. But the question is that production superstar level? But regardless of superstar definitions or what have you, Chris Paul last season impressed me so much. So much so that, you know what, in the beginning of the season, I honestly thought that people were just getting too nostalgic with Chris Paul. I was thinking, maybe Dennis Schroeder is still better. Maybe Shea is still better. But as the season progressed and as we got into the playoffs, it was clear that Chris Paul is still the real deal. And he is still one of the most complete point guards in the league. So much so that, especially after the playoffs, I would still have him over guys like Kyrie Irving and Russell Westbrook, even though he's at this stage in his career. I'd go as far as to say that. As a matter of fact, I did. I did. My list is right there. Now, y'all know me, man. I'm a Celtics fan. Jason Tatum. Jason Tatum at 11 is probably a hot take right now. It probably is, and I may be jumping the gun a little too much, but again, keep in mind that I am considering any jumps in ability, any improvements that I believe will happen next season. And I believe next season is really the first season we are expecting Jason Tatum to flat out be the best player from day one till the end of the season. And I think he is good enough to prove that. And if he does, which I think he will, we are looking at one of the best two-way players in the league. A guy who can defend multiple positions and has an offensive game, or at least a scoring bag that is elite, and just has to be a little bit more consistent in the playoffs. And if Jason Tatum can continue to lead the Celtics to one of the best records in the conference, I don't see why I can't put him at 11. Now let's address another two-way wing in the league. A two-way wing that went down on my list, and that is Paul George. Look, man, in terms of talent, Paul George is up there. He really is. He is very similar in terms of talent to Jason Tatum, because you have a guy that's one of the best scorers in the league and is a great two-way player with a handle. You know what I'm saying? You can give him the ball and he can handle the ball. But when you consider the playoffs, and not just this year, but also his years with the Thunder, although he had spurts of being good in the playoffs for the Thunder and even for the Clippers, he is just consistently inconsistent in the playoffs. It's insane. That is why I have to move him down. Also, that conversation with Jimmy Butler and Paul George is done. Which is crazy because I made a poll like a couple months ago just asking on who's better, Paul George or Jimmy Butler, because it's one of the most contentious debates in the community. But now that's done. That's done. Is Jimmy Butler. And with that being said, let's go ahead and get into the top 10, because at number 10, we have Jimmy Butler. At number 9, we have Nikola Jokic. Number 8, Kevin Durant. Number 7, Luka Doncic. Number 6, James Harden. Number 5, Giannis Antetokounmpo. Number 4, Anthony Davis. Number 3, Steph Curry. Number 2, Kawhi Leonard. And number 1, LeBron James. And there you have it, man. My top 10. My top 50. But right now, let's just focus on the top 10. Number 1, shout out to Jimmy Butler, because I think before this season, most people had him anywhere from like 12 to 17, 18, right? But after the playoffs, the way he led that team, I want to say carry, but the way he led that team, the way he performed in the finals, he earned a lot of people's respect. And he earned mine. And I think it was good enough for him to be a top 10 player in the league, especially when you consider what he brings defensively as well as what he brings offensively and what he brings off the court. Also notice that Kevin Durant went down by 1 compared to my April list. And the main factor as to why that is not even because of Kevin Durant. It's because of Luka. Because this man, Luka, bro, like I have to say this every time I mention Luka in a video, but this man is just insane. He is insanely talented. Even when I made the list back in April, I already knew Luka was a baller, right? But even then, I still think I underestimated how good Luka is. And I'm going to be honest, even right now, midway through next season, I might say the same thing. Because I'm going to be honest, to me at least, by the end of next season, we are going to start having conversations of who's better between James Harden, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Luka Doncic, and maybe Anthony Davis. I think that is how good Luka is right now. And that is how good I think Luka will be next year and for years to come. Now, let's talk about Giannis. Let's talk about Giannis because Giannis moved down from my top 3 to 5. And now I have Anthony Davis over it. So let's address it. Number one, I still stand by my statement that I believe Giannis Antetokounmpo deserved the unanimous MVP last year because of the season that he had. And this is an award based on the regular season and the regular season alone. I still stand by that. But this list is based on who I think are the best players in the NBA, period, point blank. And with that, I am taking into account how you perform in the playoffs. And especially this high in the list, I'm taking into account how your skills and your game translates to championships. I'm going to be honest, until I am proven otherwise. And I can't be proven otherwise. I am taking Kawhi Leonard. I am taking Stephen Curry. I'm taking LeBron James. And the new addition to this list is Anthony Davis. I am taking Anthony Davis over Giannis Antetokounmpo in the playoffs. A, because of their proven track record in the playoffs, and B, their ability to be effective in the half-court set. And now you might be saying, well, be so then put Luka there. Then put like Jokic there. Why wouldn't you do that? And I'm gonna be honest, I said this on a Twitter Takes React video I did. I think depending on how those two improve next season, I'll entertain that conversation. I'll entertain that conversation. And that's not even a slight on Giannis's talent, because Giannis is still one of the most talented players in the league. I have him at 5. I have him in that top 10. I had him as the MVP for a reason. But again, when we're talking about the playoffs in this day and age and how the game is being played right now, there is a case for players like Jokic and Luka and possibly Harden, but that's a different conversation I don't want to get into right now, to be over Giannis. And last but not least, we got the King, LeBron James. LeBron James is back at number 1. LeBron James is the best player in the league. I said back then that Kawhi Leonard was the best player in the league until proven otherwise, until further notice, and it just happened to be that now, November 2020, that notice came. That notice came, and LeBron James is still at the top. Now, I know for a fact this comment section is about to be crazy. No, make it crazier then. Make it crazier. Go ahead and comment in the comment section down below what you think of my top 50. Any critiques you have, comment your own. This video did take a long time to make, especially with the graphics. So again, leave a like on the video if you like it. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And if you've been keeping up with what I've been doing the past week, y'all know this is a new chapter in this channel. So go ahead and leave a like. If you know, you know. But with that being said, man, I'm out. Deuces.